Virtual reality esports. It's something that people have been trying to make work for a long time, and many different methods have come into it, trying to solve the problem of how do we make this extremely big. When looking at the PC side of things, esports is absolutely massive. You can sell out whole arenas just so people can go ahead and watch their favorite video game. However, back in the VR space, things are more remote. But they didn't used to be. Back in a time when Oculus Connects existed and Palmer Luckey and Facebook were trying to grow the market extremely huge, they ended up striking a partnership with ESL to help increase the massive scope that virtual reality had in terms of potential. And the result of that were full-on VR esport broadcasts and in-person events, most of which were held at the local Oculus Connect 5 back when that was a thing before turning it to MetaConnect. Everyone was able to get a glimpse of what would happen if VR esports could reach heights of interest never seen before. However, rather unfortunately, the partnership fell through due to a multitude of reasons. And now some of the biggest VR competitive scenes, from Gorilla Tag to Breachers to Veil, are all held online. And now these games are facing a major problem, which is, how do we get people to watch our games? For many of the way that these games are structured, you can't really just go into a game and end up watching a competitive team play, meaning that really all you can do is just hope for the best that people will tune in for broadcasts. However, with Orion Drift, that isn't the case. And because of the way that this game is built, being a social experience with VR esports added into it, players can really do just that. Walk up to an arena, sit down, and watch a competitive team play their match. And if we combine this aspect with some cards that are played right, then Orion Drift has the potential to break past every VR esport before it to become the world's biggest VR esport. Alright, y'all, we're gonna dive straight into this. No chapters, no interludes, no nothing. So please, prove to me that you do have an attention span. With Echo VR being the catalyst for virtual reality esports in general before it unfortunately got shut down, there was a lot of leagues within it that basically were trying and testing different things to see what VR esports model would work. There were some leagues that were more traditional, had a draft and allowed you to get paid, such as NEPA, and other leagues that were more community driven and qualifier based, which, you know, is VRML. And while I think both of those leagues are good and both of their business models can function within the Orion Drift space, I think if we truly want to push VR esports to its limit, we're probably going to have to draw upon aspects of real sports and then take those aspects and integrate them into Orion Drift. Take, for example, the British football structure, or as my America freedom-loving self calls it, soccer. Their structure divides it into a triangle that allows for anybody to compete, and if they go high enough, they can reach the top league where they can compete at the highest level. Of course, you start in your regionals, then you go to your nationals, then you make it to your minor leagues, then the championship, then the best of the best, the Premier League. And the reason why I say that Orion Drift could benefit heavily from having a league structure like this would basically be that, well, anyone could have a chance. Most people could at least be encouraged to try out competitive tackle ball, and then naturally, as they rise up the ranks, they could eventually get to a point where they are basically premier athletes for Orion Drift. But in order for that structure to even exist, you first need teams, which is why I want to talk about teams and branding. For the teams themselves, obviously you know it's probably going to be a club structure. If you want to stick to the British football structure, then that's just one thing that's going to have to be the case, which is also perfectly fine. These club teams, when they're not playing league, could be scrimmaging other teams and also have a very nice fan base behind them, kind of similar to that of the NBA. And the cool thing about having a more club-centered structure as well is that really you can enter multiple tournaments. That means you don't have to be stuck on one league unless of course you sign like an exclusivity deal or something. And these clubs could have subsidiary teams that allow them to scout out new talent from the lower levels. And really at the end of the day, if there's competition between clubs and competition between leagues, then nobody will be comfortable and innovation will prosper. And speaking of leagues, how the frick are y'all gonna make some money? So when it comes to leagues making money, I've basically mapped out 3 different profit routes that can be utilized in order to maximize revenue. The first one is obviously going to be sponsors. This route is the most obvious as it's already in a bunch of other esports leagues with or without VR. If someone's interested in sponsoring you, they can provide some free gear or maybe even some money. Then you do what the typical esports does, which is throw their logo on the broadcast and then thank them within intramural periods, so then people obviously know, hey, you should buy this. But that's just advertising 101. We need to be a bit more creative. We could potentially have leagues starting up their own YouTube channels, similar to that of the NBA, where they could post highlights, stories, and much more. If these channels are able to reach 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, then bada bing, bada boom, you just got a whole revenue source of YouTube monetization. And the third and final one is actually jersey sales. Yep, I know what you're thinking. It's probably gonna cost a lot of money, and you're probably ready to click off this video, but let me tell you now, there's actually a way to do it for free. For those of you who don't know, I run a clothing brand known as Ensadon, and it's basically a clothing brand that utilizes my love of photography and then slaps them on t-shirts, mugs, and well, so much more. And the reason why I say this is not to just promote my clothing brand, which by the way, check it out in the description, but also because of the company behind it, which is Spring. Spring is a print-on-demand company that has connections to a bunch of manufacturers, and what they'll do is allow you to open a free store and make free merchandise where you can just slap your logo on it, and then when people buy it, that's when they'll start printing and manufacturing them. You can set your own prices, so profit margins can be as big or as small as you want them, but at the end of the day, there is truly zero cost to you. And when you go to launch one of your products, you can actually find out that whoop-de-dang-do, there is a team jersey that you can create and sell. And just like that, boom, I have basically just mapped out 3 revenue sources for league managers trying to get into the scene. These revenue sources can also apply at the club level too. Just, take your sponsorships as usual, get your team jerseys, and supplement advertising on broadcasts for advertising and videos. But anyway, back to the competitive scene in general. I think another aspect that'll really be make or break when it comes to Orion Drift is probably going to be the fans themselves. Really, more specifically, the atmosphere that they create. Now, I have been to a lot of sports games in a lot of different places, and what I personally think Orion Drift's fan scene should look like would probably be taking the loyalty of the fans from, like, let's say the NFL, which basically just means watching a game because, it's a competitive game, and combine that with the crowds of European football / soccer / whatever. I'm just gonna call it soccer, I'm sorry y'all. And what do I mean by this? Well, basically, the creative chants, the absolute sense of unity that they have, and most of all, the fact that they are loud. Also, now that I think about it, probably just want to mention, not chants going after specific people, because we don't want to, get in their head too much. But anyway, if you've ever met a European football / soccer fan, gosh darn it, will they talk about their favorite teams. And I think that would be an amazing thing to have inside of Orion Drift. People constantly bringing up the competitive scene, bringing up their favorite teams, and trying to defend why their team is the best team in the whole scene. Well, I'm sure many of you were thinking immediately that this could lead to some form of toxicity. Knowing the internet, it's probably just best to integrate that failsafe into the plan so it's controlled rather than just running free. And I really truly think that if we combine all of this together and, weave it in a way that will actually make it work, we could potentially have a massive blow up of the virtual reality scene, both within remote play and physical play. I mean, think about it. Imagine going to a game that I think would probably closely be resembled to a CSGO esport game where people are just loud and having fun and really just trying to root for their team to become the champions, and you get to be a part of that. You get to be a part of the chants, you get to be a part of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and most of all, you get to be with your people, your community, and those who really, truly share the same love for this esport as much as you. But before I go, very quickly, I just want to say that a lot of people have been trying to call this game Gorilla Tag 2, so much so to a point that I have made it into a whole video, which you can check out on the left. Or if you want to check out the origins of Orion Drift dating all the way back to when it was called A2, then check out the video on the right. And with that said, my name is Trentic, and I will be signing out. Thanks for watching.